Hello. In this video, I'm going to share my experience with EMDR and what my visits were like. I probably saw her maybe a dozen times altogether, but the very first visit, even though you're going in for EMDR and they know this and you've maybe touched on why you need EMDR, what she did for me was the very first visit was a lot of, okay, what's happened? What's going on with you that you feel you need EMDR? Stuff like that. So maybe my very first session with her was more of like a normal counseling session where you're just sharing your experience, what has just happened to you, probably explaining D-Day and all the things that have kind of happened since then, maybe where you're at, what therapies you're doing, what other things you're working on. So that's kind of your very first visit. And then I was lucky enough to where my visits with her were always an hour and 20 minutes. So they weren't an hour or less. So I feel like I got a lot of time to really get a lot done during each session. And then in that first session, she had me do a timeline just on a piece of paper. So she gave me a piece of paper and a marker, and I wrote down like from birth until like now, how old I am now, and kind of do little tallies along the way of any time something traumatic happened in my life. So like for me, for anybody, there's maybe your parents' divorce and we're all unique to whatever traumatic experiences have happened before in your life. And so like for me, I will share that I grew up in an abusive home where my dad was physically violent with my mom. And so I witnessed a lot of physical violence. My mom and I did live in a homeless or a women's shelter off and on for like a year or so. So that's definitely something like in my early childhood that was on my little tally mark. And then you go on and it might be a divorce at some point or a miscarriage or whatever different things that some person, maybe you worked at a bank and you were robbed, or any kind of situation that you felt was a traumatic situation, which it's interesting because before betrayal trauma, I'd been through some shit, but I never felt like I needed intense therapy for it or a lot of help. Like I've even seen counselors before for things. When my son moved out, I was so hurt and sad, and I saw a therapist for that it's like, you know, I know when I kind of just want the little bit of help, but I never thought I would need like this type of therapy. Anyway, so my first week there, I worked on a lot of those, and I don't know if it was that session or maybe the next, we kind of just touched on each one of those situations and kind of just talked about them. But the main situation was kind of what I was dealing with now. So, okay, so then the second thing, so maybe we did our second visit the next week was more, okay, so tell me a little bit more about all these experiences. Then she had me come up with like, okay, so if you had to think of a person who's like a mother figure to you, and it doesn't have to be your mother, it doesn't even have to be a real person, it could be like even an animal. Like, so if you're like into, I don't know, like my spirit animal is an owl or something, it could be that, or it could just be anything. So I love that about EMDR, like there's just literally no rules. So she had me think of like, if you had to think of a mother figure, who would that be? And it could be your real mom, it could be anybody. So then you come up with that person, and she started a little bit of EMDR there, and so we chose the tapping, and what she would have me do is like close my eyes and be with this image of this person and just come up with a like almost like an imaginary scenario of like a moment that you maybe need a mother figure in your life. And so she did the tapping while maybe I shared an experience, and I would share it with her like, well, we're sitting here, we're sharing this, it's really nice, I feel really loved, you know, whatever you're experiencing from that. Then we do a little bit of that, and there's a lot of like breathing too and like getting yourself into like a good place. And then she had me think of a person that was like a protector, like somebody, like think of, again, it doesn't have to be a person, it could be anything like you feel protected with. And that one was hard because for me, my instinct is to always go to my husband, and even she told me I couldn't use him, being that I was there because of betrayal trauma, so he couldn't be my protector in this scenario. So I came up with protector, and then again we did some EMDR where I thought about a situation of being protected by this protector I had come up with in my head. And the reason I'm not sharing what the people, or because one's like a celebrity and like one's not even a person, but I'm not sharing them because I don't want to put ideas of like, oh, that's what I have to do too. Like, you'll just come up with whoever you want to. And so it was a protector, a mother figure, maybe I don't remember the title of this one, but it's maybe a very loving person, just somebody who's there to like really love you and nurture you. A nurturing person. Maybe I was just nurturing, sorry. So that, and then sorry guys. So I'm trying to think of like all the things she had me think of, but I know those three for sure. And then she also had me think of a place that was also made up, or a real place that I knew of, where I just felt really, really safe and happy and good. And I chose to create like an imaginary place for me. And so she had me do a little bit of EMDR where I was just in this place with the particular group I had picked. So my nurturer, my protector, oh, wisdom. So she also had me pick a very wise person that I look up to, or that I think is very wise. And also like, so you do individual EMDR with every single person or thing you choose to be for that thing. Did that make sense? So anyway, you do all of that, and then she has you go to the place, like your very special place, and you have all of these good, strong, the wisdom, the nurturing, the motherly, the protector, all there with you. And then she also had me think of a place or something, it could be anything, where if something bad happens, those things are almost banished there or go there, and they can't hurt you because they go to this place, or, you know, it could be a room, it could be a whatever. And so you come up with all these, and then by the time we were done with that second session, she let me know, so what we've done today during this session was really create a lot of resources for you so that we can really start hitting EMDR on your next session. So I was very intrigued and like, well, this is kind of interesting, and what is this? So what ended up happening when I went in for my first EMDR experience was we did tackle the big D-Day. That was the hardest day of my life ever. And so as we're doing the EMDR, she had me experience that experience while tapping my knees. I cried a lot. It was very difficult to really say, and she really has you go into like, what are you feeling? Like, where do you feel that in your body, and how does that feel? And I had to take some breaks to just catch my breath, to be able to breathe. And so she did a lot of EMDR, but you're also like saying your whole experience. Okay, so then you finish that experience, and I think she had me like drink water, take a little walk around like her office area, and just kind of take like a breather from all of that. Then she had me sit down again, and this time, oh, and then she asked me like on a scale from 1 to 10, like, how hard was that for you? Like, how traumatic was that, or how difficult was that? And for me, I'm like off the charts, like over a 10. That was just brutal. I feel like I just relived the whole thing over again. It's very hard. So then she's like, okay, well, we're gonna try some to bring in some of your resources now. So now we do the same thing, and she's like, let's go back to the beginning. And she picked kind of the starting point of my story that was maybe where I felt was the beginning, or she picked up on that was the beginning. And she's like, but this time you're gonna have those resources with you. So even though nobody else can see them, you can see, like, your mother figure is there, and your protectors are there, and your wisdom is there, and everybody was there with me. And so it was so interesting, because even though it's like your imagination, to me, like, so we're doing it and I'm reliving the exact same thing I just talked to her, but now I felt like I wasn't there all by myself. Like, I literally had wisdom talking to me, saying, hey, you're gonna be okay. Like, I know this is really scary right now, but you're gonna get through this. And I had like the nurturing come to me and just be like, and I've got you, and I'm gonna hold you through this. And even though it's just your imagination, but it's kind of reliving that same exact situation with your protectors and your wisdom and your mother figure. And so and almost like it was so weird, because on my D-Day, it kind of all went down in the kitchen, like the conversation my husband and I had, and it was so horrific and awful. And he actually left when pretty much like the worst of the worst, I don't know, maybe I found out worse later, but probably like the biggest bomb had just been dropped on me, and he left. And so I was here home to like deal with it. And we have a sliding glass door and some grass out there in our back patio, and I just kept pacing and walking in and out of the house and like crying. And I remember falling on the grass crying, like just really struggling with that day and that moment. But when I'm reimagining it at this point doing EMDR, it was so crazy, because at the end of this this whole thing I did, instead of living it the way I did that day, I actually was on the grass, but in a circle with all these strong things like my protector, my wisdom, my nurturer, my mother figure. They were all there with me on the grass. Anyway, we did this probably a couple times, and I kind of went over it. And then it would be like on a scale from 1 to 10, like how bearable was that, or how hard was that? And it would go from like being above a 10 to like a 7 to like a 4 to like a 2 to like, I could talk about it now with you guys and I'm not even reacting. So anyway, it is really amazing, like what EMDR can do for you. And of course, one other thing that she did, which this is how I interpret that, your past experiences come to you. So during a lot of our work, maybe through the betrayal of my husband, and then maybe the experiences I had or the feelings, she's like, so where in your body are you feeling this pain or this hurt? And you know, you pick the spot on your body that you physically can feel, like maybe it's your chest, or for me sometimes it's like here on my arms. I don't know why sometimes I feel pain there. And so she would then say, now think about a time in your life, the very first time that you can remember that you felt that same feeling. And no lie, I remember being scared as a little girl, unable to help my mom when maybe my dad was hitting her. And I was like, I felt this same exact physical feeling then. And so it's almost like then you work through that feeling of, okay, so let's say now here comes your protector in that moment, and they're protecting you and your mom. And so you almost again like, so it's not like hypnosis or anything, but you do kind of relive these same situations with a better outcome, or just you see it through a different perspective. And so I hope that's not all confusing, and I hope it doesn't freak people out. If anything, I hope it makes you want to try it, because for one, it reminded me of that movie Life of Pi, where he kind of has a tiger and has all these different animals, but you know, they all kind of represent something else for him. And even though maybe I have my mother figure and I have my protectors and I have my wisdom and I have my nurture that I can visualize as who I specifically picked, at the end of the day, those are all within me. And I think that's where you gain so much power in EMDR, is really learning how really strong you are as a person. So my mom just called and it interrupted my video, so I'm gonna really try to connect the two. But anyway, sorry about that. So yeah, that's pretty much like my EMDR experience. I hope I didn't miss anything awesome that I was about to say, but I do want to say that my story, whether it's my husband's betrayal or just my story in general, is pretty crazy and intense, and there's so much to it, and it's very complicated. And I feel like every time we'd see a counselor, because we probably saw like 3 counselors before we found the right one, and that sucks because then you have to tell your story over and over, and you're like, I'm tired of telling this freaking story. But if anyone does have questions on like maybe what my process was, or I don't know, just like anything, like I'm pretty much an open book at this point, and I just would love to help anyone else in this situation, because the people that were my resources and were there for me, I am forever and always will be grateful to every contributor of this healing, of this difficult, hard journey. So much love to everyone that's a part of this horrific club that nobody wanted to be a part of, and happy healing. And if I can answer any questions that would help you, just ask me. If anybody's mean, I may delete the videos, because I can't do it. Like, I just personally, I can't take mean shit. So all right guys, happy healing.